In Atlanta, Georgia, a tragic incident unfolds involving a baby whose promising life is cut short at just 6 months old. Initially thought to be a natural cause, his mother's call prompts a new investigation, revealing startling details about his passing. What led to baby Ocean's untimely demise? Join us as we delve into the circumstances surrounding this heartbreaking case and the legal proceedings that follow. Could justice truly be served for baby Ocean? What could have been done differently to prevent such a tragedy? This case study will take us to Atlanta, Georgia's most populated city as well as its state capital. This is where Jermaine Ramon Carter, often affectionately referred to as Baby Ocean, was born on July 2, 2020, into the devoted arms of Jermaine Carter Sr. and Zakia Morris. He was a very cheerful baby who used to spread boundless joy to his family with his contagious smile. Sadly, his promising life was cut short before it had even fully started. On February 2, 2021, at the age of 6 months, Baby Ocean was brought to Easter Seals Center Sylvan, a daycare facility located in southwest Atlanta. After some hours, it was found that the infant had stopped responding. A 911 call was made, and an ambulance was there in no time. The baby was transported to the hospital right away, but tragically he didn't make it. At first it was thought that Baby Ocean's death was caused by natural causes. However, over 2 years following the awful incident in 2023, the child's mother, Zakia, made a police call. Although the specifics about this conversation are still not disclosed, it spurred a new investigation into the circumstances surrounding Baby Ocean's passing. In an effort to determine which staff members had been present during the terrible occurrence with the Baby Ocean, law enforcement officers got in touch with the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. Upon this inquiry, 2 people who were present in the facility when the infant passed away came to light. One of them was a woman who went by the name of Stephanie Thompson. As the investigation went on, significant details about what transpired on that fatal day began to emerge. During the police interrogation, Stephanie disclosed that on the day mentioned, Baby Ocean had dozed off in her arms. With careful consideration, she then positioned the baby so that his face was looking up on a bobby pillow before continuing to work on her laptop. The second staffer wasn't there in the room where Baby Ocean was napping at that time. While Stephanie was still on duty, 2 more babies in her care woke up from naps, so she took care of them. Baby Ocean was still sleeping when Stephanie last checked on him. But shortly after, the 6-month-old began to make noises when left unattended. As he stretched his arm, Stephanie assumed the toddler was only correcting his position. When Stephanie returned from finishing her duties with the other infants, she was startled to find out that Baby Ocean was no longer breathing. A 911 call was placed shortly after, and CPR was administered in an unfortunate attempt to save the baby's life. Nevertheless, it was not successful. After Stephanie's interrogation, detectives conducted a comprehensive review of the training resources and found something important. It was found that boppy pillows were not included in the list of safe items to be used while an infant is sleeping. The official records made it clear that all the newborns were to take their naps in a cot or car seat. Boppy pillows were intended solely for infants who were awake, as stated by Lena Barber, the director of the daycare where Baby Ocean passed away. Unsettling information on the potential hazards of boppy pillows, particularly in relation to suffocation dangers, was revealed by the U.S. Consumer Safety Commission. Surprisingly, the federal department archived specific boppy pillows, 7 months following the premature demise of Baby Ocean. This recall was prompted by the sad loss of 10 babies across the nation. The CPSC made it apparent that infants who were able to move ran the risk of suffocation or winding up in situations that restricted breathing. There is an even greater risk of babies rolling off the pillow surface because of this. Consequently, it was established that by placing an infant in an unsafe sleeping environment and neglecting to provide adequate monitoring, Stephanie and the daycare facility had broken state regulations. After these findings were made, Stephanie was placed under arrest and charged with second-degree child abuse and second-degree homicide. She didn't receive a bond. On June 13, 2023, Stephanie made her first court appearance. The outcome of Stephanie's legal proceedings remains uncertain, casting skepticism on her sentencing. As the harrowing details of baby Ocean's tragic demise unfold, the investigation into his untimely passing sheds light on systemic failures and lapses in child care protocols. Stephanie's negligent actions, coupled with the daycare facility's disregard for safety regulations, resulted in devastating consequences. As she faces charges of second-degree child abuse and second-degree homicide, the question remains: should the severity of these charges be reconsidered? Could Stephanie's actions be more accurately categorized as reckless endangerment rather than second-degree homicide? What measures could be taken to ensure a fair and just legal outcome while still holding accountable those responsible for baby Ocean's tragic death? Join the conversation and share your thoughts. In the heart of Sanford, Maine, a town wrapped in the warmth of its own history, stood the Emerson School. For over a century, this beacon of learning echoed with the laughter and dreams of countless children. But what secrets lie beneath the soil of such a place, where generations have played and grown? The school property was sold in 2017 in order to build a petrol pump and a convenience store that belonged to the Cumberland Farms chain. Buried deep beneath the playground, where kids used to play baseball and football, was a secret that had lain undiscovered for decades. On May 4, 2017, while digging for a pipeline for the petrol pump, construction workers came across a collapsed casket. Upon further excavation, they discovered human remains, which startled them considering the site had been next to a school for a long time. Who could have buried somebody close to a school like that? Detectives retrieved finger bones, jaw bones, teeth, and ribs, but the pelvic bone could not be found. While it was unclear whether the remains were that of a male or a female, medical examiners believed that the victim was a female child, possibly 10 years of age. Authorities also discovered cracked fragments of an antique wooden casket, along with a few nickel-plated handles and the casket keys. Although the place was initially thought to be a possible crime scene, Major Matt Gagne of the Sanford Police Department subsequently determined that it was actually an old graveyard. This wasn't the only time the residents of Sanford stumbled upon old skeletal remains. In the 1980s, when digging for the town hall's elevator shaft, they unearthed a very old leg bone. Subsequently, the experts found that the casket goes back to the Victorian era, implying that the body was over a century old. After discovering something so bizarre and unsettling, the construction of the petrol pump was postponed. Next was the laborious process of meticulously excavating the grave. Foreman Peter Smith of the construction crew was accompanied by Stephen Buck, the city manager at the time, as he meticulously combed through the rubble by hand. Paul Auger, a local historian and teacher, who was a member of the board of directors of the Sanford Springvale Historical Society, also joined them. Being an aficionado, Auger proclaimed the site to be a historical excavation as soon as the casket had been discovered. At the time, the mayor granted them additional time to thoroughly retrieve all of the significant bits of evidence. His son, Andrew Auger, assisted in gently recovering all of the pieces without causing any damage, because they had become fragile over time. They carefully collected glass fragments, metal shards, and bones covered in mud and dirt, documenting everything they did. The Sanford Springville Historical Society states that the single-pane glass window on top of the casket was typical of the Victorian era. The coffin was framed as though it were in a fairy tale by the roots of an oak tree nearby. The roots have grown into the casket and are still there. Every bone, every relic, including the 2 coffin keys and a gingham cloth, had labels attached to them. A gingham cloth is kind of a plaid check fabric, presumably once part of a dress. Officials decided it would be appropriate to identify the person buried in the coffin before reburying their remains. The money needed to pay for the DNA tests that would be carried out in an attempt to identify the deceased was partially funded by the proceeds from the sale of Emerson School. Students from Paul Auger's high school history class offered their assistance in the identifying process. Even with more help, the procedure did not become any easier. Paul Auger spearheaded the cause. However, the state medical examiner's office was of little use in identifying the remains. The local city council granted funding for the excavation, which Mayor Tom Coate prioritized. Mayor Becky Brink would thereafter remain a supporter of the cause. The digging phase took quite a while. Paul and his son Andrew searched for additional bones using a special sifter designed for the particular purpose by the owner of the nearby Shaw's hardware store. They discovered fragments of a mandible with teeth, ribs, vertebrae, and sections of a skull. Usually teeth make victim identification easy, but at the time there were no dental records. Even so, DNA evidence benefits from it. Using chopsticks and soft bristled toothbrushes, the dirt and root hairs that covered the bones were removed, and the area was then thoroughly rinsed with water. Following the cleaning, the bones were placed on an examination table at the Carl Heald and Black Funeral Home. By now, pictures, maps, and records from 1889 had made it known to the general public that the school grounds had once been Woodlawn Cemetery. Prior to 1889, Thomas Goodall had bought the site on which the new Cumberland Farm shop was being built. Thomas Goodall, the owner of the Goodall Mansion across the street, was the man who founded Goodall Mills in the 1860s. Built next to the cemetery was the previous Sanford's High School, now known as Emerson School. Around 1900, the town started to relocate graves from the cemetery to provide room for the Emerson School, which was constructed in 1901 and officially opened in 1902. When Willard School was built in the 1920s, it evolved into a high school while Emerson served as an elementary school. The graves were collapsing by the early 1900s owing to the lack of maintenance and climate change, so they were relocated to Oakdale Cemetery to make room for a playground at Emerson School. 77 bodies were excavated and buried again at Oakdale, according to city records. By 1933, the site had been cleared enough for Emerson School to build the ground. On September 17, 1971, the front page of the Sanford Tribune and Advocate newspaper featured the headline, "300 Emerson School children cheer as town officials convert Woodlawn Cemetery into a playground." Paul Auger could remember children boasting to him about how they played baseball with gravestones for third base, though they weren't just stories. When the remains were laid out at Carl Heald and Black Funeral Home, they were able to presume that these were the bones of a little girl. However, it took 6 arduous years to identify the famous Woodlawn Cemetery Doe. The medical examiner's observations were supported by preliminary DNA testing. As opposed to what they had first thought, the bones actually belonged to a woman. Hopefully, enough DNA signatures from the victim's teeth would be accessible to pinpoint the family to which she belonged. Back then, Major Gagne volunteered and uploaded a genetic profile to the GED Match public database. Finally, in the spring of 2022, after many years, Paul Auger got in touch with the DNA Doe project. By assisting in the identification of unidentified bodies, the DNA Doe project hopes to resolve mysteries and reunite family members with their own ancestors' remains, while also helping to honor the memory of the departed. Jennifer Randolph, who works with the DNA Doe project, started actively participating in the hunt for the missing connection. As a result, the entire process was sped up. They passed on the DNA samples to Parabon Nanolabs. Forensic genealogy was relatively a new division of Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia and had just been opened. While there were plenty of matches, the majority were not conclusive. Ultimately, by creating a family tree from her great-great-niece and nephew, the lab's investigative genetic genealogists using bioinformatics were able to identify the unknown remains. There were 3 promising leads: a paternal half-great-great-niece, a paternal half-great-great-nephew, and a maternal third cousin 3 times removed. Linking together their family and building up a family tree, the DNA Doe project was able to trace the daughters of Ferdinand and Lois Patton. Everything fell into place when an obituary for a woman named Edith Patton appeared in the Biddeford Daily Journal of November 12, 1891. That was the actual puzzle piece that helped put everything together. A census taken in 1870 listed Ferdinand and Lois Patton as residents of Fairfield in Somerset County, Maine. It mentioned 2 of their daughters, Elfrida, who was 2 months old, and Edith, who was 3 years old. Edith was born in 1867 and grew up in Fairfield. Her brother was born in 1872. As per the 1880 census, Edith, at the age of 13 years, was a live-in housekeeper in Lewiston, whilst her father worked at a sawmill. Eventually, Edith Patton made her way to Springvale, where she passed away at the age of 24 from consumption in 1891. In the newspaper article published after her demise, it was written that she was beloved by a wide circle of friends who sincerely mourn her untimely death. According to court documents, Lois and Ferdinand Patton separated in October 1880, following an alleged adultery charge. Ferdinand Patton remarried twice. In October of 1880, he wed Emma Densmore, his second wife. She died shortly after their marriage, apparently soon after his divorce, which resulted in a third marriage. In 1884, he got married to Agnes Avery. The couple had 3 sons together. In Chelmsford, Massachusetts, in 1899, the couple gave birth to a daughter. Ferdinand named her Edith May, presumably in honor of his deceased daughter Edith. Edith never got married or had kids, and neither did the rest of her siblings. Elfrida Patton, her sister, died in 1917, and Landil Patton, her younger brother, died in 1890. The news of Edith's demise was announced in the Biddeford Daily Journal. Her cause of death was reported as consumption, TB, which was an epidemic in the 1800s that claimed the lives of 1 in every 7 individuals in the United States. Edith was only 24 when she passed away in 1891. According to the article, she was beloved by a lot of acquaintances, who are deeply saddened by her sudden demise. She was loved so much that she was buried in a glass window coffin with nickel-plated handles, while clothed in her finest. Edith Patton passed away at an early age, leaving not much to document her life. There is no record of when she relocated to Springvale. Her parents also passed away not too long after she lost her life. Nonetheless, Paul Auger believes that she might have been employed at a shoe shop, as was customary for women in that era. In Woodlawn Cemetery, lots of graves lacked a gravestone or some other marker identifying the deceased. Many were degraded due to the ages and the weather. Now, 132 years after being abandoned, thanks to technological breakthroughs, Edith was finally discovered, named, and given a proper burial. On March 1, 2023, she was identified by the DNA Doe Project. The DNA Doe Project conducted a press conference where her identity was made public. The DNA Doe Project's Jennifer Randolph claimed that the crowd at the Sanford press conference was larger than at a press conference in 2021 that named a victim of Chicago serial offender John Wayne Gacy. Randolph stated that Edith's identification was a testament to the compassion of Sanford residents. She described the elaborate procedure that led to Edith's identification. This required working with DNA in a database, examining strong matches, and looking through a variety of records, including diaries, newspapers, and censuses. Going through a local's diary, Randolph came across a pivotal line. Edith Patton passed away today. This finding gave the case some momentum. Paul Auger checked the obituary at the Biddeford MacArthur Library. That provided confirmation. The notice in the Biddeford Journal, dated November the 25th, at 91, listed Edith's friends, but didn't provide any information about her family. "None of Edith's relatives have been buried in Sanford," said Auger. "The same Auburn, Maine cemetery is where they are all buried. The city declared that Edith will have a memorial in her honor at Oak Hill Cemetery in Auburn, where she would be buried alongside her relatives." Thus, Edith Patton was to be reunited with her family 132 years after her burial. All because of the advancements in DNA technology, the largest mystery to ever affect Sanford had been solved. As the sun sets on the story of Edith Patton, the girl who lay forgotten beneath the grounds of the Emerson School, we are reminded of the power of history, technology, and community to unearth the truths that time has buried. The discovery of Edith's final resting place, hidden for over a century, brings closure to a chapter long lost to the annals of Sanford, Maine. But as we close the book on Edith's journey, we are left to ponder. What other secrets lie dormant beneath the surface of our own backyards? How many more stories of the past wait silently, hoping for the chance to be told? As we contemplate the mysteries that remain locked within the earth, we invite you to share your thoughts and opinions. Could there be undiscovered tales in your own community? What do you think the future holds for uncovering lost histories with the advancing tide of technology? The story of Edith Patton may have reached its conclusion, but the quest for knowledge and understanding continues. Join the conversation and let us know your views on this captivating tale of rediscovery and remembrance. In the early hours of August 13, 2005, a peaceful small town was rocked by a chilling event. An intruder silently entered a home, armed with a knife from the kitchen, and targeted a young woman asleep in her bedroom. The situation took a terrifying turn as the assailant placed the knife around her neck and threatened to sexually assault her. But in a moment of sheer courage, the woman seized an opportunity to change the course of the night. How did this encounter shape the lives involved, and what untold consequences unfolded from this point? Stay tuned as we unravel a story of bravery, fear, and the quest for justice that spans years beyond this fateful night. Anthony Poole, Mills County Sheriff, stated that the case shook the entire community. "This doesn't happen at all in our county." During the incident, the assailant lowered the knife momentarily, and the woman managed to toss the weapon away. Following a brief altercation, Sheriff Anthony said that the perpetrator left the scene, leaving behind a drop of blood. It was a crucial piece of evidence that the Mills County Sheriff's Office had recovered, but without the appropriate resources, not much could have been done with it. Uploading it to the Combined DNA Index System, abbreviated CODIS, was the only thing they could do at the time. Meanwhile, a forensic expert from the Texas Department of Public Safety's Crime Lab established a single-source DNA profile for the unidentified male suspect. When the profile was first submitted to CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, no matches were found. The sheriff's officers kept on gathering evidence and investigating the case, but they eventually hit a dead end. For nearly 2 decades, the case remained unsolved. This kind of tragedy stunned the locals, and the fact that the evidence had been lying there for almost 20 years was unfathomable. Everyone involved found it to be frustrating, per Sheriff Poole. According to Sheriff Poole, the Texas Rangers approached the office in 2021 and examined the blood drop for familial DNA search. This was a modern technology made possible by the SAKI, Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, a federal grant for advanced DNA analysis. "They actually returned with a familial match on it," he added. Sheriff Poole said that the lead investigator and old Sheriff Clint Hammonds tested a pair of gloves and found a perfect match. The match was 41-year-old Jessie Rodriguez. Rodriguez admitted his guilt right away, saying that the guilt had been eating him since the past 18 years. He expressed relief at having been finally apprehended. Rodriguez claimed that he broke into the victim's house and attempted to sexually assault her, but he was nicked in the interim and had to leave the site. Jessie Rodriguez, 41, was found guilty of a second-degree misconduct of attempted aggravated sexual assault by the 35th Judicial District Court of Mills County. Rodriguez was sentenced to the maximum of 20 years in jail. "It was a major victory for the county," said Sheriff Poole. In a statement, the Texas Rangers stated that the evidence gathered by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and the contribution of forensic scientists from the Texas DPS Crime Lab in Waco had been crucial for solving this case. The major breakthrough in the cold case was made public by the Texas Rangers just a day before the Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Charlie Wilkinson, executive director of the Combined Law Enforcement Associations of Texas, stated, "We owe them at least this day to thank them, send them positive thoughts and good wishes." Wilkinson contends that each day should be Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, yet since it isn't, it is worthwhile to appreciate them for everything they do to ensure the public safety. A mysterious case unfolds as fishermen discover a dead body floating in the Saginaw River in 1973. With 7 gunshot wounds and a blunt force injury, the victim remains unidentified until 2022. The story takes a surprising turn as forensic technology and collaboration uncover the truth behind the victim's identity. Join the investigation to discover the truth behind this cold case. Who was this person, and what events led to their tragic demise? Could you help solve this long-standing puzzle? In Zilwaukee, Michigan, on March 13, 1973, fishermen discovered the dead body of a male drifting by the Saginaw River. An autopsy was conducted which revealed that the individual sustained 7 gunshot wounds and a blunt force injury to the back of his skull. As per the coroner's speculation, he had been shot, knocked unconscious, and dumped about 6 weeks prior to the fishermen finding him. Following a year with no additional leads for the detectives to look into, the guy was designated as John Doe and put to rest. The case remained unsolved until 2020, when it was revisited by the Michigan State Police's Missing Persons Coordination Unit and their cold case team. The remains were excavated for more thorough DNA analysis and then transported to the Department of Anthropology at Michigan State University for an additional examination. In late 2021, previously acquired hair samples and a fresh bone sample from the John Doe were handed over to Australia Forensics, a forensic genetic genealogy facility located in Santa Cruz, California, with assistance from the nonprofit DNA Doe Project, Inc. Through cooperation from the DNA Doe Project, a potential familial match was identified in 2022. The unidentified remains were traced back to a family in Beeville, Texas. The family was notified of the potential identification with the help of the Texas Rangers, and detectives were able to collect reference samples of familial DNA from various family members, which were then forwarded to the FBI's forensic facility for comparison. Consequently, the FBI determined that the remains belonged to Daniel G. Garza-Gonzales. His age had been 28 years old at the time of his death. The announcement of the identification was made on January 5, 2023. Daniel was a war veteran who served in Vietnam and sustained injuries in the battle. He returned to the United States and subsequently left Fort Worth, Texas, with the hopes of finding employment in Flint, Michigan. He never got back in touch with his family. Kyron Binder, the DNA Doe Project's forensic genealogist and team leader, said this: "We are grateful to those of Daniel's cousins who offered their support when our investigation came to a standstill by providing DNA for uploading it to GED Match, which enabled our team to identify him. Until the case is resolved, our team will work for as many hours as needed. It is requested that anyone with any information regarding the killing of Daniel G. Garza-Gonzales contact the Michigan State Police Detective Sergeant Bill Arndt at 989-615-6257. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of cold cases.